Hello everyone. That was a great introduction. I'm a US-based attorney. My first practice area was white-collar criminal defense. I was involved in the EU delisting application, and I've been working on the Canada delisting application for about 2 years. And so today, in the next 10 minutes, I'd like to give everyone an update of where we are in the delisting application, how it impacts Tamil rights in Canada, and how the current LTT ban impacts Tamil rights in Canada, how it has functioned as an impediment to Tamil justice efforts around the world, from Europe to North America at the UN. And hopefully shed some more light on the legal implications of the ban from 2006 to today. I'm going to talk through about 5 slides. The information is a bit dense, so I can handle questions after. Just want to give everyone a high level view. So if we go back to 2009, from the legal perspective, there's pretty much three patterns that are observable, largely due to the terrorist events. So the first one was everything converged on blocking humanitarian intervention. So if you guys go back to 2009, whatever the UN was saying, the West was saying, Sri Lanka was saying, there was no humanitarian intervention regardless of the Tamil body count. That's team 1. Team 2, there was actually no upper bound on the Tamil body count. 10,000, 40,000, 70,000. It's unclear how high the body count could have gone. And 3, after 2009, what you see in Western jurisdictions, the UK, Canada, the US, there's essentially a political pressure to remove the ban. But since the war's over, what has happened is the way membership is so I'll finish the third thing. Pretty much the current ban, it's a ban on the diaspora because they modified what LTT membership means. So, these are the 3 reasons that we've been, the 3 themes from 2009 and why we've been working on this delisting application for the last 2 years. The picture on the right is one way to conceptualize the impact of the ban on issues that matter to the Tamil community. Pretty much the ban in Canada was in April 2006, and so this pretty much moved the peace process inside the war on terror. And a lot of the obstacles that Tamil activists are facing, for example at the UN, is likely because it also moved the genocide issue inside the war on terror. So this diagram, again, trying to give a big picture. Some of the key dates: 1948, that's when Sri Lanka had independence. Everyone remembers 1983, that's Black July. 9/11 happened in 2001, and you have a peace process, and then Mundi Michael happened in May 2009. If we simplify the evolution of Tamil political history, you pretty much, in phase 1, you have non-violent resistance. In phase 2, after Black July, it sort of shifts to it's an armed struggle, right? And it's a battle of military power. After May 2009, the armed struggle now is pretty much a legal struggle. And the way I see it, it's more of a battle about information. When you look at the UN response to May 2009, the critical factor from a legal perspective is there was no fact-finding mission. And a lot of the facts that matter to the genocide argument are not in any public reporting, because the UN and INGOs like Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, they weren't given access to the battlefield. And so that's why I think the current struggle we are now, it's not a military. There's no military dimension. It's more a battle of information about what are Tamil rights, what's the evidence, what really happened, what does accountability look like in 2022. So that's the top picture. The bottom picture, just talking through, I think one question is asked for is why should we do delist? What's the impact of the ban? So if you go back to 2006, first of all, the ban collapsed the peace process because it criminalized peacekeeping activities. What happened after 9/11 is, since the issue is so polarizing, right? LTT, if you're a Tamil, you're a tiger. If you're a tiger, you're a terrorist. If you're a terrorist, you're always a terrorist. This is such a polarizing issue that basically the peace process was sort of totally moved out of the debate. So everyone is focused on the LTT and no one is focusing on the peace process. And so the first impact of the ban was interfering in a Norwegian-mediated peace process. The second impact of the ban is basically blocking humanitarian intervention. When you look at all the Tamil activism in 2009, there were a lot of calls to intervene, and Sri Lanka kept using this pretext of counterterrorism. Right, and the end result was basically blocking humanitarian intervention. After May 2009, the ban now, it indirectly covers the diaspora, so now it impacts constitutional rights, in Canada and Europe. And it continues to serve as it's sort of like an Achilles heel that is blocking all of the justice activism.
Absolutely love so much, Franklin.
Okay, so again,
Hello, Jubilees, all!
these
We have the latest Justin Saya.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. Okay, so on this third slide, again, if we go back to 2006 and we shift focus away from should LTT be on the list or not, to did Canada comply with its constitutional and international law obligations when it banned the LTT during the peace process? And the way to think about that is, so on the picture on the left, this is pretty much how the legal structure looks in every state. It's sort of like an onion, and it has different layers. And it starts local level, federal level. There's a constitutional level. In Canada, that's your charter rights. Then there's an international level. So the anti-terrorism law in Canada is federal. It's federal. So to apply it, it has to comply with both constitutional law and international law. And if we move over to the middle picture, so Canada's ban was in 2006. So if we go back, 9/11 was in 2001. And during the first 5 years of the war on terror, this is where most of the bad things happened. Guantanamo Bay, Abu Ghraib, waterboarding, all the bad things that you've heard about. And it was also during this period that the LTT was banned. And in our legal assessment, pretty much the Canada-US defense partnership really rushed into the war on terror. Defense spending, increased. Troops were in Afghanistan. They were really focused on the Taliban and Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. And I think part of this counterterrorism policy was, we need to ban the LTT. And in doing that, I think Canada made certain legal oversights, which we're bringing up in this delisting application. And the third diagram sort of points that out. In April 2006, in Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka was not part of the war on terror. In April 2006, Sri Lanka was 4 years into a Norwegian-mediated peace process. And so when you banned the LTT in April 2006, you also banned Norway, you also banned, indirectly, all the peacekeeping activities also banned under the terrorism legislation. And I think this was just due to the, geopolitical pressure to, we have to, the US and Canada wanted to move the war on terror forward, and banning the LTT was just part of that. Right, so when we talk about delisting, you can't really analyze it apart from the global picture, right? It was the LTT ban, wherever it happened, UK, EU, Canada, it's sort of part of this global policy. This diagram is meant to illustrate why delisting in the diaspora is an important exercise to pursue. And it's important because of the way the membership is defined. So before May 2009, membership in the LTT was based on like a factual reality. Everyone knew what that was. LTT was in Sri Lanka. After May 2009, what you see, you see this in pretty much the anti-terrorism legislation in Europe and Canada, is the legal model shifted from focusing on groups to focusing on the community. So before May 2009, if you're a terrorist or not, it was based on some sort of group membership. After May 2009, the logic essentially starts with a racial classification. So, are you Tamil? If you're Tamil, what are you tweeting? Are you LTT aligned? Have you said anything about Tamil? And then there's some determination that, oh, because this Tamil person, based on the racial classification, is expressing certain thoughts, now they're an LTT member. And so, while the Tamil community can be divided on what the LTT means or not before and after May 2009, as a practical matter, the governments are defining those 4 letters for everybody. And so when I see this, I'm not Canadian, I have no stakes in terms of like, this doesn't directly, delisting in Canada doesn't impact me at all, but it does impact me as like a Tamil person. And yeah, racial classifications violate the charter. You can't just ban a full racial group. And so this aspect is one of the arguments that we're bringing up in the delisting application. Okay. And no one is meant to really process this diagram. It's just meant to show how complicated listing and delisting is. The red boxes are basically the different dates and jurisdictions where the LTT was proscribed as a terrorist group. The circles below are the different efforts to delist, and I can go into the details of this later. Essentially, most of the delisting efforts have failed thus far because we did not, the legal arguments didn't address the original bans. The way the terrorism laws are set up is the government bans a group and then the ban is renewed every few years. And so if you avoid challenging the original ban, you basically risk losing the argument. And in the big picture, the Canada and EU bans are probably the most important because those are the ones that clearly overlap with the peace process. So that's a high-level overview of where we are. I think the LTT presents a good textbook delisting case for Canada. Normally governments add groups to the list, but you don't see them removing groups from the list. In Canada, May 2009 ended a while ago. Things have changed. So if Canada were to develop a sensible delisting playbook, LTT is certainly a low risk use case to test out. And that's all I have. Thanks.